Good morning. I rattle my dodecahedron in your lovely faces this morning. I assure you, it is Ashura. It is an important Islamic holiday, a day of fasting and reflection and thanksgiving for the Old Testament event of Moses being delivered at the Red Sea. This was the moment in the movie where Charlton Heston, as Moses, stretches out his rod and says, "Behold his mighty hand." Constance was waiting all morning for that. Oh, I think
Lon says that almost every day, so he's got really good voice at that.
it's how I get by. Anyway, it's and the Red Sea parts, and Moses's entourage passes safely across the bottom of the Red Sea with fish flopping. And but anyway, it commemorates that day, and it's as good a day as any for those of us who are health conscious to fast. And sure enough, I have fasted at least from midnight last night to close to noon today. But that's just my schedule anyway. Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about raising children in a magical environment. Now, when I first started to study magic and mysticism and things like this, this wasn't really an issue, too much of an issue, because so very few people, relatively speaking, were raising their children or even lived in a different environment than just classic Judeo-Christian. In the United States, we're talking about, in Nebraska in particular. Everybody was nominally something, and very few people looked on their religious beliefs and everything in a very serious way. Like in the small town I was in, everybody belonged to some kind of church. You just did. In Great Britain, everybody went to church. Whether you were religious or not, everybody went to church. On Sunday, you had the vicar over. You turned the vicar's bicycle around. And but it's different now, okay? Especially in the last 50 years, and I can speak in terms of the last 50 years. Look at me. So things have changed. People have what used to be called alternate lifestyles, alternate religions. And even when Constance and I sort of began our life in magic and our careers in magic, there were even many among us who had children that still thought nothing about sending their children off to Methodist church. The idea was, we'll let them decide, yeah, but we'll let grandma take them to church every Sunday anyway. Then we'll let them decide after that. Slowly that's gotten better. But the idea, it's a very thin tightrope that you walk when the culture around you is fundamentally different and has a fundamentally different worldview, spiritual worldview. And you still want your children to get along socially with other kids. But most of all, you would like them to see that what you're doing is perfectly normal. But anyway, raising children in a magical home. Now, this is an excerpt from Homemade Magic. It's been out of print for quite a while. It's coming back into print with my good friends at Next Millennium, but it's going to be a while. It's still in progress, but stand by. Until then, I'm going to give you a little tidbit. Raising children in a magical home. Starts off with an epigram from Kahil Gibran, the prophet. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. Children, all children, are magical beings. When a child is present, you are in the presence of a god. That little kid is the most powerful, awesome, and terrible magician in the room, and you will surely suffer if you don't pay close attention. The child will soon enough grow into a floundering grown-up like yourself, but for a few golden years, you have the opportunity to learn from a master. This doesn't mean that you must put your magic on hold in order to raise a child. On the contrary, the moment the baby is born, your life gets really magic. But as a parent magician, you must be perpetually mindful of the fact that the child is an ever-present and integral factor in the equations of your magical life. Try as you might, you cannot avoid the implications of this immutable fact of life. In the spring of 1971, Constance and I had been married for nearly 4 years. One afternoon, we were both struck with the same irrational conviction that it was time for us to have a baby. We did some quick calculating in our heads and determined that if conception happened immediately, the baby would be born on Constance's birthday, February 27th. Eschewing our usual contraceptive precautions and ignoring the afternoon sun, we joyously and with full intent proceeded to conceive a child. There was no trouble at all. About a month later, while attending church services at the Self-Realization Fellowship Temple in Fullerton, Constance fainted. It was more like an ecstatic swoon. And I had to help her outside to the temple gardens. There, sitting on a marble bench in the cool, shaded garden, she blissfully announced that she was now sure she was pregnant. She was right. On February 27th, 1972, we woke up and said, "Today's the day we're having the baby." We took a long walk to El Matador, our favorite Mexican restaurant, and gorged on guacamole, chips, and cheese. Then, as if we were not stuffed enough, we walked even further away from home to Thrifty Drugstore for a double scoop ice cream cone. We waddled home from our gluttonous adventure in the late afternoon and amused ourselves by playing penny ante poker and mused over the fact that we still hadn't chosen a name for the baby. Early in the evening, Constance's water broke, and we were off to the hospital in my light green 1950 Chrysler Windsor, which we named Martha. The car had a name, but the baby didn't yet. Constance brought along a framed picture of our favorite guru at the time, Paramahansa Yogananda, and she set it up at her bedside in the labor room. His serene image comforted us both immensely during that long night. I remember dropping off to sleep while trying to be helpful, rubbing her back. We had taken literally the first series of Lamaze classes at Hoag Hospital, which was at the time a cutting edge for a more natural childbirth. We were very lucky to be able to do that because one of my fans, Charlie D and Milo fans, one of my musical groupie, I guess, was the head nurse in that section at Hoag Hospital. And she hooked us up with, we were just lucked out, okay? We were flat broke, couldn't afford that, but anyway, that's how things sometimes work out. Our beautiful baby boy was born a little over 6 hours later than we had calculated 9 months earlier. And our lives instantly became even more profoundly magical. Several days later, we settled on the name Jean-Paul. On our first date, back in high school, Constance told me she wanted 6 children. She had names for all of them, and the first one was to be named Jean-Paul. I was really hoping she would forget the other 5 children idea. And I'm glad she did. Even though for the next 20 years we'd be operating a very active magical lodge in our house, out of our house, we tried to raise our son in the most, quote, normal, unquote, environment possible. It was if there were 3 of us, and it was if the 3 of us were growing up together. We never excluded him from lodge activities, with the exception of the super secret OTO initiation ceremonies, and we took him with us everywhere. If we couldn't take him, we didn't go. The lodge and class members became our extended family and provided him with a collection of colorful aunts and uncles whose love continues to bless our lives. For his part, Jean-Paul was always a very good sport, sharing his home and his parents with countless of out-of-town guests, taking part in rites and plays. For years he read the parts of all the fairies in our backyard performances of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and helping move furniture to prepare for masses and initiations. The 3 of us were a team. And I'm happy to say, I can still say the 3 of us are a team. We amused ourselves, and we amused each other. We were and still are our own best audience and best friends. We opened our home to Jean-Paul's school friends, who also enjoyed the colorful craziness of the eccentric DuQuette household. And we remain friends with all of them. I got a little picture in the book of Jean-Paul and his friend Abe Britton there at an indoor rite of Jupiter. You see Karen James there in the back of Abe. That's his mother. And there's Doug James in back, is looking all Pan-like. That was probably in around 1985. Actually 1982. Jupiter, 1982. Our son grew up amid a heavy schedule of magical events, public and private. Several of the 7 planetary rites of Eleusis afford rich opportunities for children to dress up and be part of the fun. I'm going to talk, because there's I talk about the rites of Eleusis in a sort of a caption to that picture. I'll skip over that. Magic is not a belief system. Wait a second. I'm going to get ready for a screen capture. Magic is not a belief system. Cut. Okay. Magic is not a belief system as the term is commonly understood. So there was really not much doctrine with which we could indoctrinate Jean-Paul. Therefore, there was little for him to rebel against. Besides instructing him to always use common sense and logic when evaluating spiritual or philosophical ideas, we encouraged him to develop his own spiritual worldview. We exposed him to a broad spectrum of all religious ideas and never pressured him to believe anything. As far as I can determine, our lifestyle provided a safe, nurturing, stimulating, and for as wild and crazy as things were, wholesome environment for a child to grow up in. We couldn't be prouder of the man he has become. Constance and I are both of the opinion, although there's no way to prove this, that the child chooses the parents, and does so for reasons that none of us can ever completely understand with our meat brains. We may have our personal opinions and theories of child rearing, but neither of us would ever dream of telling another parent how to raise their child. That being said, I have a few suggestions that might be helpful for magicians and children. Or for magicians with children, excuse me. Bullet point number 1. Don't make a big, spooky, dramatic deal out of your magical studies and practices. Your involvement in magic might be dark, spooky, and mysterious to your parents or your grandparents, but it shouldn't be dark or spooky for your children. It should be intelligent, fun, logical, beautiful, and above all, normal. To that end, Don't behave as if the rest of the world is persecuting you for your magical beliefs and lifestyle. Don't suggest that your involvement in magic is any way dangerous, sinful, or illegal. Don't expect children to understand the metaphoric reality of angels, demons, and gods. That I will repeat. Don't expect children to understand the metaphoric reality of angels, demons, and gods. And finally, set a positive example. If the practice of magic makes you happy, let your children see and share in your happiness. If the practice of magic does not make you happy, get into something else. Parenting is, and always has been, and always shall be a challenging and sometimes frustrating endeavor. Your parents weren't perfect, and you won't be perfect either. Be prepared to forgive your parents for their imperfections. And if you're lucky, your own children will someday forgive you for yours. Your magic will not help you if you cannot free yourself of both the past and the future. And that's my few words on raising children in a magical environment. And I hope that was a fun thing for a Monday morning. And I'm not sure you say happy Ashura, but I'll just say, may you have a reflective and peaceful Ashura. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Hopefully see you tomorrow.